Today I'm going to try to talk about alcohol. It's going to be impossible to cover everything because this beast, this phantom dragon that we ride in the middle of the night, that takes us to beautiful, dazzling worlds and then drops us, pummeling us deeper, further down into the ground, is just too strong, too versatile, too wide-reaching. It affects pretty much every part of our body and brain, and on top of this, it is a very accepted part of society. We don't really question it too much. As a result, it's become an ingrained part of many cultures and many lives, and we don't really want to look at this dragon in the eyes. We don't want to scrape away its scales and look at it for what it really is. So this is also one of the reasons why I haven't really faced this topic in any rigorous way just yet. It seems I still want to play with this beast. I want to ride the dragon one more time. I want to feel it for one more night. But as we know, it does need to be slayed. It makes perfect sense why we don't really want to give it up, because alcohol delivers on so many different levels. It gives us whatever we don't have, whatever we need. And not only does it give it to us, it gives it to us basically immediately within 5 or 10 minutes. But that's the kind of danger of it. It's a rug pull. It's a bait and switch. Once we get those things, whatever they may be, and we'll talk about those things throughout this episode, we feel and we are promised, basically, on this weird unspoken level, that we are going to keep getting those things, keep feeling connected, keep feeling high on the dopamine, keep feeling okay with the serotonin, keep feeling relaxed. We're not going to feel anxious anymore. Everything is going to be okay, and on and on. But it's like alcohol is like this, the best, the most deceptive, the most nasty, dirty salesman in the world. It gives you all this free, amazing stuff, and then it just vanishes, and you got to keep chasing it. It's like this little bunny rabbit that shoots hearts out of its eyes and licks you and hugs you and feeds you money and golden eggs and stuff, and you're like, yeah, I like it, this is my guy, and it's just like perfect, and it's short term. It immediately delivers. You're thinking, dude, I found the jackpot, this thing is it. And then the bunny rabbit just like hops away, like kind of faster and faster and faster, and the faster you run chasing it, the faster it gets. And in the end, it's just an impossible game. You can't catch up with that thing. Yeah, you can pet it. You can play with it. You can maybe play with one of its golden eggs and eat a few of those hearts that are popping out of its eyes at the beginning. But that's all you're going to get. This is no solution. It's just a little hack that's going to give you the feeling of a solution. But in the end, after one or two drinks, you're done. And it's kind of sad because we obviously want a quick, easy way to solve our problems. We want to feel better. There's nothing wrong with that. But the way alcohol solves our problems, within that first hour, maybe only 10 or 20 minutes, it causes more problems in the end. The illusion, it sort of entraps us in this weird world where we can keep distracting ourselves for a little bit longer. We can put off solving our actual life problems for a few more days. And the more we drink, the more it's easy to just keep living in that illusory virtual world that is ultimately bringing us down. So today we're going to talk about what alcohol is, why we drink it, how it affects us in the short term and the long term, what it does to our brains and bodies, and how to maybe get some of these things that alcohol promises, but in a more sustainable way that actually benefits us in both the short term and the long term, that actually solves our problems. Because alcohol is not really solving many problems. It might solve some of them, but it's going to add to more than it actually provides. So it's usually a net loss. I'm not going to say it's not for you, but usually that's the case. You're not going to feel that in the beginning, because in the very beginning, the first drink or two, you do feel good. You do feel relaxed. Everything is better. Whatever you needed, whatever you were lacking, whatever you were seeking, you got it. But it's a rug pull. It's a bait and switch. After that, this cute little rabbit transforms into it still looks like a rabbit, but it transforms into this poisonous snake or porcupine or something, and you keep touching it thinking, yeah, it's gonna make you feel all warm and happy and stuff, but it's poisoning you. It's shooting that venom into your blood, into your brain. It's spiking. It's jabbing you with its little spikes. You might not feel that. You might feel the love. You might feel the happiness, but you are getting poisoned. You are getting hurt, and you will feel that after the illusion wears off, after the hypnosis is no longer there, basically the next morning and throughout the next week, and hopefully not, but throughout the rest of your time, this period of your life where you're drinking. It might be for years or decades or whatever, but the pain is there, the damage is there. You are changing the structures of your brain and your nervous system and how you feel and how you think and behave. Basic point, alcohol affects us in a lot of different ways, and because it affects us in some obviously fun and enjoyable ways, especially in the beginning, we don't really want to look at the bigger picture, but it's something that we do need to look at, or at least think about. We want to know what exactly it is we are receiving. Before you buy a car, you want to know what exactly is the car. Before you buy a house, you want to know what exactly is this thing I'm signing up for. And same thing with alcohol. It's kind of bizarre that we just toss this mysterious, magical elixir into our bodies and trust it. And we do know from our experience that it's hurting us in a lot of different ways, that it clearly isn't what it shows itself to be. It is wearing multiple masks, and nonetheless, it's such a powerful, addictive thing that we keep coming back to it, and we don't really question it, but we need to. We need to stop blindly trusting alcohol, to trust what it shows itself to be, how it makes us feel in the beginning stages of consumption, that is only a piece of the much larger picture. It's this beautiful tip of the iceberg, but we need to go underneath the ocean and examine the larger iceberg. Okay, so that's what we're basically going to do today. Before getting into alcohol itself, I first want to start with this basic idea of homeostasis, equilibrium, balance, having it all, feeling good, being right there in the middle. That's what we want. We want to be in this sort of sweet, balanced state. And whenever we're not, we try to get there. Unfortunately, life doesn't work that way. Life isn't all pretty. We can't find that middle path, at least not for a long, sustained period of time. Things are always changing. They're moving around. We go to one extreme and then the other extreme. And whenever we're on one extreme, we want to go to the other end. Whether one's good or bad, it's not really about good or bad. It's just about we want what we don't have. We don't appreciate what we do have. And so whenever we are in some kind of bodily or psychological state or whatever, we don't want to stay there for too long. We want to go to the other end. So we often think of things in terms of good versus bad, healthy versus unhealthy, but that also is kind of an illusion, because whenever we have the quote unquote healthy thing, we want the unhealthy thing. Whenever we're doing the good thing, we want to go do the bad thing. Whenever we're connected, we want to be unconnected. We want freedom. Whenever we're alone, we want people. Whenever we're high, we want to feel low. Whenever we're whatever, we want the other thing. Basically, whatever we're lacking, whatever isn't in our body or our life, we want it. We aren't going to really think much about what we have. We're going to think about what we don't have. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, it doesn't matter. We need to have this sort of balance between all of the different things that, for better or worse, we want and probably need. So don't feel guilty for wanting to drink, or even drinking, or wanting to eat that junk food, or wanting to watch that Netflix, or to cheat on your wife. These are natural things to want. Whenever we have something really great, we want the other great thing. We want to have it all. I'm not saying you should drink alcohol, or that you should cheat, or that you should consume junk, but the desire is very, very natural. We are these growth-seeking, resource-seeking, greedy creatures, and greedy not being a bad word, greedy meaning we want to keep moving. We want to keep getting better. We want what we don't have or feel we have enough of. Those things that we miss and are somewhat deprived of, at least at the current moment. Our body, our mind, even society itself, and even every animal wants homeostasis, wants to have all of the check boxes marked off. But the problem is whenever we get one thing, we lose another thing. And whenever we lose that thing, we get another thing. And you just literally can't have it all. And that's also one of the beauties of alcohol. Alcohol gives this appearance of really solving all of your problems. In that first drink, you feel perfect. You feel everything is okay. I am no longer anxious. I'm no longer stressed. I'm no longer alone. I'm no longer sad or depressed. I no longer am living this meaningless life. I have connected to everything. It's also why we love sex. Sex also gives us this feeling that everything is okay on every level. We are connected with another human being. We are passing on our genes. We're feeling good. You have oxytocin. You have serotonin. You got what you want. You're getting more. You got your dopamine. Everything's all right. It's like this magical drug. So in this way, sex and alcohol are not that different. The difference might be that at least sex sometimes is real. It is actually making your life better, but at the same time, sometimes it's just a virtual reality. It's just an illusion. It's not really solving anything. It might be making things worse. Alcohol tends to usually be in this latter category. While it does actually have positive benefits on your life sometimes, for example, you go out to that bar and you meet that guy who introduces you to a job and therefore improves your financial situation, improves the satisfaction of your life at work. It makes you a better person. Maybe you meet an amazing friend who actually is a friend and together you are better. Or you meet that special someone, you get married to this chick in the club or whatever. These things do happen. So alcohol isn't obviously entirely a false promise. It doesn't always harm you in every single way. And this is also part of the danger of it. It's because it does, in almost this random, unpredictable way provide us with these real life, long-term benefits that really, really help us, that we would not be able to get otherwise, or at least it doesn't seem we would be able to get otherwise. We keep going back to it because we want that. And it also makes us feel good in the beginning. So there's all these benefits, but we're not usually looking at the bad parts until they've become bad enough to where we have to look at them. So some people are going to not like me for talking about this, and that's okay. I think the most important things that we need to talk about are those things that nobody wants to talk about and are going to upset large swaths of the population. That's okay. And I know I've been rambling for a while. This is a non-scripted episode. I'm just talking, and this is the way I talk. So this is also a good chance for you to get a taste of how I really am. And even then, this is not who I really am. I'm still a bit nervous. I'm trying to, talk in a way that makes sense. I'm talking into a microphone alone on a weekend. This isn't really natural, but instead of writing, I want to get in the habit of just speaking. And this is sort of the early stages of that process. So it might be a bit rough, and I might ramble and go on and on and on about something before we actually hit the real topic. And let's do that now. Let's actually talk about alcohol. But before we start talking about alcohol, we need to get a basic overview of the nervous system. Basically, our nervous system is divided into two parts. We have the central nervous system, which is our brain and our spinal cord. And then we have this peripheral nervous system, everything else, all the other electrical wires and cables and circuits and all of that run throughout our body. Okay? And then, I know this sounds like some stupid overview, like who cares? Why are we talking about this? By understanding the way that our nervous system works, it's going to really shed some light on what I was talking about earlier, especially if switching from one extreme to the other, finding that sweet spot, finding that balance. There are these two extremes within our nervous system. There's these two branches of our peripheral nervous system, or more specifically, part of that peripheral nervous system, the autonomic nervous system. We have one branch, which we call parasympathetic. Oh my God, the names are so horrible. They don't even make sense. But anyway, there's one side, parasympathetic, that is relaxing. It calms us down. The electricity is lower. We feel more relaxed and less stressed. And when we're in this state, also, it's easier for the blood to flow, for the air and oxygen to go through our bodies, for our larger, newer brain structures like the prefrontal cortex to operate efficiently, and therefore we can think and reason and plan and act in a more reasonable way that's going to serve us in the long run, and it's going to make us more likable and happy and social. And we want to be, obviously, in this parasympathetic, relaxed state. But if we're there for too long, then we're going to swing to the other extreme. And that is the sympathetic nervous system, this excited state where we are more motion-based, more going out into the world of seeking things and running away from things or fighting things. This is a fight-flight mode. Fighting and flighting are good for a lot of things because they help us survive, and sort of on the same side of this seesaw, we are seeking things, we are doing things, we aren't just chilling out and relaxing, but there's a lot of dangers of being here. Whenever we're here, our higher brain structures, the special human prefrontal cortex that has language and reasoning and future planning and decision making and logic and all of that kind of gets tampered down and shut down, and we get more into these lower lower not meaning worse, but older, more primitive, survival-based structures that we share with all other mammals, the limbic system. And if we get too far on this sympathetic, nervous, excited, energy-based extreme, then we might even drop that and get lower and lower into our reptilian mode, really, where we're just scared, anxious, trying to survive, and we get trapped there. And then we really want to get to that safe, social, relaxed mode, the other side of the nervous system. So we naturally start sleeping and relaxing and doing things like this, but not necessarily. There are these short-term hacks, ways to rise up through the nervous system and feel better immediately. And alcohol is one of these things that immediately brings us to the other side of the seesaw. It takes away that anxiety, that fear, that pain, that overthinking, whatever is going on whenever you are down in that scared, reptilian, sympathetic not in terms of sympathy, but this dumb word that they gave to this part of the nervous system, this stressed out, high energy state that you want to get away from. Alcohol will calm you down. It will take away all of these problems, but only for the first drink or two. Then it slams you back to where you began and actually beyond there. It makes everything worse. You re-enter that fear-based, anxiety-based, scared animal mode. And that is precisely what we want sometimes. For example, when we are feeling too good, too healthy, too happy, too relaxed, then we want to bring in a little bit of chaos into our life. We want to not be a smart, logical, perfect human. We want to be an animal. We want to get wild. We want to hunt and seek and feel the pain and all of that. We might call this self-sabotage, but really it's just seeking what we don't have. We're trying to find that homeostasis. We're trying to find that balance. When there have been times of peace for way too long, we want to enter the war. When you're too social, you want to be alone. Whenever you have been married for too long, you miss your bachelor days, and when you're an old bachelor with nobody next to you, you wish you got married. We envy the others. We want to be what we are not. We are never satisfied. We never can just relax and stop. We must keep moving forward. And it's not even forward. It's just from side to side. It's just trying to taste the entire rainbow, to feel the entire electromagnetic spectrum. And that's why we drink. And it's really why we do anything. The problem is that this modern world is littered with too many hacks, too many short-term solutions, too many magic tricks and little sales gimmicks that claim and promise to bring us to that land that we have been away from so long, this new world that is going to solve all of our problems, until we get there and we get bored of it and we get homesick and we want to go back to where we started. But anyway, whether you're trying to get back home or you're trying to find a new land, there are a lot of things that promise to take you there. Little false phantom ships that sink in the middle of the ocean, little dragons that fly you on their wings and then toss you off down to the ground once you are exactly where you want to be, up there in the air. There are no free things in life. Easy come, easy go. The faster you get something, the faster you will lose it. The easier it is to feel high, the easier it will, and the more inevitable it will be that you will feel low. Everything is in balance. So when you trust and go to these short-term solutions, these things that basically bring you across an ocean, across a universe of life that usually takes days or weeks or probably years or decades to get to, there's going to be a consequence. You're going to feel the other side of it. You're in debt. Alcohol basically is a credit card. It's putting you in debt. And if you can pay back that debt, that's fine and good. You're going to pay it back, so it's fine and good either way. But if you keep charging that card, you're going to feel some long-term pain that's very hard to get out of. This is where it becomes addiction. This is where you have no friends, and your family and your wife and everybody have left you, and all you have left is this false golden ticket alcohol that isn't really delivering on any of its promises anymore, not even in the short term. You're just stuck. And that's where we don't want to be. We don't want to be stuck. It's okay to use these short-term solutions and then let them whiplash us back to reality. And that pain, when we get slapped back down to reality, teaches us that, hey, this thing isn't working. That's good. It's a signal. Our body and brain and our life circumstances are a painful signal that tells us this isn't what I thought it was. Alcohol or whatever is not going to solve my actual problems. So let's start to look for other solutions, ones that aren't going to whiplash me and spank my little bottom into oblivion. And the ones that are less painful, but also less pleasurable in the short term are these ones that take a long, long time. They're things like meditation, studying, working, putting work into your actual project that you're trying to do. Something like this podcast, or maybe you're writing a book, or maybe you're trying to lose weight, so you go to the gym every day. It's this long haul that is really going to get you to where you actually want to and need to go. But it might not pay off, at least not in the traditional sense, for a very long time. So you got to keep going, bit by bit. You got to be patient. And there's no magical drink or substance or gadget or pill that's going to do it. You must take lots of small and big actions that may or may not ever pay off, that slowly compound over time, that don't feel so bad, and maybe also don't feel that good, but they feel realistic. They give us a pleasure that they should, but the good thing about that is they're not harming us. They're just growing us. And real growth doesn't feel as good as this immediate illusion of growth. It does feel great, but it's a different kind of greatness. It's like that feeling of swimming in the ocean versus surfing the waves. It's a feeling of having love versus having a one-night stand. It's that great feeling you have when you eat a lot of vegetables and real food versus that high you get from a can of Coca-Cola or a bag of Doritos. It's like Newton's third law of physics. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. That's what we're talking about. Okay, enough of this me horsing around and philosophizing. Let's get to what actually happens when we drink alcohol. How alcohol affects us from the first drink to the second drink, on and on until the next day. Let's go through the night of drinking. Let's go through that process. And actually, we call it alcohol, but actually there are three kinds of alcohol. One is ethyl, another is methyl, and the third is isopropyl. And you already know this because you've realized that the word alcohol already has other meanings in our daily life. For example, there's that alcohol in the drinks that you drink, but there's also the alcohol that is used in hospitals, like rubbing alcohol, and the alcohol in hand sanitizers, for example. The alcohol that we drink is in the form of ethyl alcohol. It's called ethanol. This is important because while ethanol, that stuff we drink in the beer and the vodka and all of that, while it is very dangerous and toxic to our brain and body, it's not as dangerous as the other forms of alcohol, methyl and isopropyl. Isopropyl, by the way, is what's in the hand sanitizer. It's what's in the rubbing alcohol. This stuff, along with methyl, are really, really dangerous. You cannot consume these. You really shouldn't be drinking ethanol either, but at least our body can find a way around it. And how does it do that? Well, it actually gets broken down very quickly by the liver. The ethanol gets converted via some enzymes in the liver, and enzymes are like little keys that change the chemical structure of something. So these enzymes in the liver change the chemical structure of alcohol, i.e. ethanol in this case. The first thing that happens within 5 or 10 minutes, or maybe even faster, after you take that first sip of alcohol, is that alcohol reaches the liver, and the liver is one of the liver's main jobs is to detoxify the things that you put into your body through the environment, through pollution, through food, through alcohol, through all of these different things. So it's a kind of cleaning organ. It cleans out and it blocks and saves you from certain things, okay? In this case, the ethanol is very dangerous to you, so your body, what it does via the liver, via this enzyme called the alcohol dehydrogenase enzyme, or ADH, that converts the ethanol into something called acetaldehyde. Acetaldehyde. And acetaldehyde is actually what causes the feeling of drunkenness or inebriation. The feeling that you get is not from the ethanol, it's a feeling from acetaldehyde. And acetaldehyde is much more dangerous and toxic than ethanol. So why the heck is the body turning something dangerous into something more dangerous? Well, it's just a step in the process. Sometimes you have to go somewhere you don't want to go to get to your ultimate destination. After acetaldehyde is created, it is then converted one more time into something called acetate. So there's a different liver enzyme called aldehyde dehydrogenase, ALDH, and that takes that super dangerous acetaldehyde. Dude, you must hate me for using all these big science words. But anyway, this dangerous stuff into acetate. And then ultimately that acetate can go to your brain and be used as a fuel, and not a very good fuel, more of like a wrecking ball. It gives you energy, but it's this empty energy, these empty calories with no nutrients, and it does get your brain running. It does do things, but it also breaks a lot of things. It is also a very toxic substance, and if we have too much of it, if we have too much acetate or too much acetaldehyde, that is going to cause a lot of problems, obviously. But sometimes you want to kind of break things. You want to shut things down. And so maybe turning down some parts of that brain, shutting off some of those cells can be a good thing. You don't want that brain to be running on overdrive all the time. Hence the allure of alcohol, among other things. Remember, acetaldehyde is this super dangerous stuff that our liver quickly reconverts into something else, acetate. But not everybody has that enzyme. Remember, everybody's different. Everyone has different genetics, different biology, different everything. So this is why many East Asians, such as Japanese, get red in the face whenever they drink alcohol. That's a reaction in the body due to the fact that they have too much acetaldehyde in their system. Basically, they lack the second enzyme, ALDH, that converts that super dangerous stuff into acetate. So they get this buildup of acetaldehyde, but that's kind of fine because it usually teaches them, hey, I don't want to drink anymore. This is not fun. This is painful. So naturally, they feel sick. They can't drink alcohol. They don't drink as much. It all kind of sorts itself out. That pain from the acetaldehyde, that drunkenness, but also that redness, that irritation, that nausea, that turns them off to probably becoming less likely to become habitual alcohol users or to become addicted or to, when they do drink as much. Then there are those in other cultures, for example, with other body types, other genetics, particularly Europeans, who tend to have more of this liver enzyme, aldehyde dehydrogenase, ALDH. Therefore, they are able to drink more and they don't feel as bad from the drinking. They are more likely to keep drinking and to keep drinking throughout the night and throughout their lives, and more likely, therefore, to also develop alcoholism. That alcoholism, they might say, hey, it's normal, it's part of this culture, it doesn't affect me. And while parts of that might be true, ultimately, you don't want to be dependent on anything or any substance, especially if it is causing problems in your health or your life. And this makes sense why people in, say, Germany and the UK and Ireland, France and Russia and all of these places, including North and South Americans of European descent, why they drink more. Well, because their body can drink more. They can tolerate that alcohol a little bit more easily. And these are just generalizations. Every human, every person is going to be different, but this just goes to show, again, that we go from one extreme to the other. If the alcohol is going to give you this extreme pain that you get if you don't have the enzyme to break down the acetaldehyde, then you're going to go to the other extreme and say, hi, I don't want to drink at all. If it doesn't do that, then you're going to keep doing it, or you're more likely to keep consuming it. That is, until something else sends you off into the other direction, something either painful that reminds you, hey, I can't do this, or something pleasurable saying, hey, I want to go over here, away from this toxic, liquid, lying leprechaun. Okay, so you start drinking, you initially start feeling good. That alcohol actually, in the first stages of the night, it snaps you into that happy, relaxed, peaceful state, what we called the parasympathetic nervous system. It actually opens up your blood vessels. It makes you relaxed. It turns on neurotransmitters like GABA, which turn off or turn down the electrical activity between brain cells. That reduces anxiety, reduces pain, and makes you feel more euphoric and blissful, makes you social, makes you happy. It gives you dopamine, serotonin, probably oxytocin because you're actually connecting with other people. It's making you feel amazing, just like how maybe that first time you have sex with that woman or man, that makes you feel amazing. But the second, third, and fourth times, not as much. Same with alcohol. But now we're talking about the second, third, and fourth, and fifth drinks. And the more you drink, the more it really isn't going to make you happy. All of this is going to go in the other direction. Like we said, easy come, easy go. For every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction. And because you got that sharp spike in dopamine and serotonin and everything in the beginning, it's going to go back the other way and deeper and deeper and deeper into the pit of hell. And by hell, I mean the place where you were trying to get away from, the place where you don't want to be, the pain, the place you were using alcohol to escape from, but that ultimately it could not save you from. That problem that you wanted to solve, but ultimately it cannot solve. It shows you, it tells you that it can in the first drink or two, but then the reality hits, it can't do any of that. And it plays its switcheroo, stealing you away, leading you down a dark labyrinth that winds around and tumbles you down into the opposite direction, hypnotizing and pulling you deeper into the place that you're trying to get away from. I mentioned that alcohol increases GABA. GABA is a neurotransmitter that calms down electrical activity between the neurons. It is a neurotransmitter that is dominant when you're in that relaxed parasympathetic mode. But while it might be nice to turn off certain parts of the brain, certain parts of your cognition, you don't want to turn it all off. But the thing about alcohol in the way that GABA works is, yes, it's relaxing. Yes, it turns off some of the parts of the brain that you can't turn off otherwise, or not so easily, or at least not in the short term with such a simple, easy hack. Alcohol is pretty indiscriminate in terms of what brain regions, what cells it shuts off. There is a general trend, though, and by understanding this general trend of how it moves through the brain and how it moves through the body and where it starts, which parts it starts shutting off first and second and next, that will give you a better understanding of why you do the certain things that you do when you drink, and why you feel the way you feel when you drink, and how to, if you do drink, know when to stop. And also to understand the dangers of drinking way too much, because you don't want to shut it all down. I can't really get into the entire structure of the brain. One, because I don't fully understand it, and two, it's just a huge ass topic. But basically, the GABA, the calming turn off key, starts in the newer, less necessary parts of the brain. That is the neocortex, the prefrontal cortex, for example. This is the human part of the brain that is involved in language, thinking, rational thinking, reasoning, time, future planning. It's also the part of the brain that inhibits the lower structures, the lower emotional, childlike, animal-like structures, i.e. the limbic system and beyond. In normal life, when we're not drunk or we're not in too much of a fight-flight mode for other reasons, for example, from having too much stress from work or eating junk or not getting enough sleep or whatever, there are different ways, of course, that we can shut off our prefrontal cortex. Basically, stress and unhealthy junk food and lack of sleep, whatever. Also, as the day wears on, the prefrontal cortex naturally starts shutting down. Think of it like a battery. It charges up in the middle of the night when you're sleeping, and it's at sort of full capacity in the morning, so you can use it fully, you can focus, you can do creative tasks, you can do all of those nice things. But as the day gets later and later, the battery starts draining, and by the time night falls, you've basically used up a lot of its battery, so there's not much more for it to do. You get a certain kind of decision fatigue, but also creative fatigue and focus fatigue. You're basically turning down all that decision-making power that you had earlier on. You're not doing this consciously, but it's just a basic resource problem. Conveniently, in our culture, in most cultures, we drink when? At night, when we are at our weakest, when we are most vulnerable to temptations, when we can't really think as clearly or resist the urge to do something that we know we shouldn't probably be doing. As night gets closer and as it gets deeper and deeper into the night, our brain starts going nighty-night. It starts shutting down, starting once again with the less necessary structures, the newer parts, starting with the prefrontal cortex. So don't blame yourself too much for caving into the desire to drink at night when earlier in the day you said you wouldn't. There's a scientific resource-based reason behind that. Anyway, when this higher human cortex is more powered up and fully functioning, when we are in our sort of normal default mode, assuming we have a fully formed and fully functioning prefrontal cortex, we will be able to inhibit certain behaviors and things we say, things we do. We might have this idea deep inside of our animal mammalian brain saying, yeah, this is a good idea. I want to do that. Let's do that. But sometimes that's not a good idea because it's going to have social, economic, legal, health consequences. You have to have that big boss, that parent upstairs to tell the child, to tell the animal, no, that's not a good idea. Don't do that. Let's think long term. Because remember, that limbic system, that middle part of the brain, cannot think in terms of time and long-term consequences or the future or any of that. It's just thinking about now. Oh, what's going to feel good now? What's going to give me the resources and the happiness now? There is no future. There is no time. There is no life. There is no me or identity or any of that. This is just about survival and about getting resources and passing on the genes and all of that mumbo jumbo, which makes sense. Even children themselves, they don't really start developing the outer structures of the brain, this prefrontal cortex, until later in elementary school, and it gets a big surge in adolescence. That's when this part of the brain is being created. So it makes sense why children can't really think about the future and can't really think about the consequences. And of course, the older they get, the more they can. And this is also the beauty of childhood. We can just live in the moment. We don't think about all this stuff in the future, or about having to be a certain way or to do certain things, or we don't have this strong sense of identity. All that conceptual, language-based stuff, this time-based stuff, just literally doesn't exist. There isn't that thing upstairs, at least not a very strong thing upstairs, that is saying, no, don't do that. That's not a good idea. But as adults, as we are reaching the legal drinking age, at least we should, barring some kind of trauma, physically or emotionally or whatever, we should have a fully functioning prefrontal cortex. And it's good and useful because it lets us have goals to move forward into the future, to improve our life, to think more strategically and long term. But there's also a downside to having this big human brain of ours. Yes, it lets us think, but that often leads to overthinking and thinking too much. Remember, this is where the stories, the verbal stories exist. And sometimes we have these stories, these worries, these anxieties that are looping and looping in our brain, and we can't turn them off. Say, for example, your girlfriend broke up with you and you can't stop thinking about it. Or you got all these problems or things going on at work and you can't stop thinking about them. And your mind is just racing with these thoughts. That's when you want to turn that bad boy off. You want to turn off the boss, kick the dad out of the home, and be home alone and free as a child, as an animal. So when we drink alcohol, that's what that does. It, especially starting in the beginning stages, it turns off that thinking, rational adult brain and lets the child and animal have more free reign. The beauty of this, less anxiety, less worry, less thinking, less future, more living in the moment, being in the present, feeling good in the here and now. So you have that first drink or two, and you're reducing anxiety, you're feeling more relaxed. Remember, at the same time, you're also getting a surge of dopamine, that feel-good chemical that shows you that you're going towards your rewards, that you're about to get something new, about to get what you want, get what you need. And you don't need to understand what that resource is, but your body feels that it's getting something, that it's getting better. And you might even be able to think about this on the conscious level. Maybe you are about to get that girl, or you're about to meet that new person in the bar who's going to change your life, or whatever. But you feel good. It also, in the beginning of the night of drinking, the first couple drinks or so, it will also increase serotonin, this feeling of, unlike dopamine, which is making you chase new things, but also thinking you're going to get it, serotonin makes you relax and appreciate what you already have and saying, hey, I'm okay. I've got it. I'm enough. I have the resources, and that makes me feel good. I have the status, and that makes me feel calm. I'm all good. Life is all good. There's nothing to worry about. We're gonna be okay. And while all of this is happening in your brain, down throughout your entire body, in your blood vessels and your capillaries and everything, you're opening up. The alcohol is acting as a vasodilator. It's opening up your blood vessels and capillaries and relaxing you. So it's relaxing you in this entire brain and body way. You are all better all over. You're also probably more social and less scared to talk to people at this point too, because of the fact that the alcohol has turned off that thinking, that worrying, that future planning, that risk assessment part of the brain. Now you're willing to talk to people and open up and maybe say things that you normally wouldn't say, or share things that you normally wouldn't want to share, express emotions that you've been hiding. And at the same time, other people around you are also in that same brain state. They might be further along in the night of drinking, so they might have shut down more parts of their brain aside from just this prefrontal cortex. But either way, you're able to talk to each other in this raw, present, unfiltered form. And that feels good. That makes us feel that we have other people in our lives, that we are connected, that we have a tribe, that we're not alone. Hence, oxytocin. And we think of oxytocin as this chemical that we get from physical touch. And yes, you're probably also more likely to physically touch people and to be touched by others when you're out drinking. Because once again, people aren't really thinking about things as much. They're not inhibiting their behaviors as they normally would because they don't have that part of the brain activated anymore. That is shut down. They've returned, or they are returning to this childlike state. But it's not just about touch, it's about trust. And somehow we feel like we can trust the world while we are drunk, or at least in the beginning, before things flip in the entire other direction and turn our new, beautiful social world upside down and inside out. So we seek alcohol because whatever it is we want, whether it's to decrease anxiety, to turn off the thinking, to ignore our real life problems, or to feel connection perhaps. Maybe you've been spending too much time alone. I, for example, when I spend too much time working on this podcast, or studying, or reading, or doing other things I think are important, that often leads to a kind of isolation, and I'm alone, and I seek the connection with other people, not just for myself, but for my survival. We need other people. So naturally, I want to go out drinking sometimes afterwards. It's kind of crazy. This is a podcast about the brain, about health, but nonetheless, I'm a human and I'm drawn to drinking sometimes because I have learned from my past that worked. That made me feel connected, for example, or it let me turn off my brain, my thinking, overthinking brain. It made me feel okay. It made me feel life is good. I'm enough. With the serotonin, it helped me relax. It gave me the GABA. It put me in that parasympathetic, relaxed, calm, lower energy mode. And that felt good. I want to go back there, and I want to go back there now. I don't want to wait. I don't want to put in the work of building relationships, of building, of moving forward in this project, of doing the work, of raising my status in whatever way I perceive it. All of these things take time and continuous action, and the good feelings are slow and gentle, and the big win does not arise in a sudden spike. It is the result of compounded efforts over time. Alcohol is a cheat code. It gives us all of that success in whatever dimension we want it now. But of course, as I said like a million times already, it's an illusion. It's just a feeling, a mirage, and a really dirty one, because it not only stops working, not only does your brain stop turning on the serotonin and opening up the blood vessels and turning on the oxytocin and dopamine, but it actually stops, puts on the brakes, and just takes a quick U-turn in the opposite direction and speeds up down the hill, taking you with it, promising you all those luxuries it already fed you with. But it's that rabbit, it's that twinkly-eyed rabbit that is just too fast to catch. You keep throwing those coins down that claw machine, and you're never going to catch that doll. Yeah, you caught the first one. It made it easy for you. You got that little big win on the slot machine the first couple rounds, and then they had you hooked, and you weren't going to win again. And if you are, you're going to be there a long, long time. You're going to be in for a long, long ride, and it might not even take you anywhere, except to maybe the dump, the city dump, or to some pretty busted down house that you don't even want to live in, or to some other place that you don't want to be, that isn't really solving anything. Pretty soon, that vasodilation turns into vasoconstriction. Your blood vessels and capillaries get smaller and tighter. Your body starts getting into a state of stress. It leaves that parasympathetic, relaxed land and re-enters the other extreme, the sympathetic mode of excitement and energy and of stress and fight, flight. An ocean flooded with adrenaline and cortisol and yes, dopamine. So there is that excitement, but it's a bit too much excitement. It's too much. It's hanging out with a lot of noradrenaline, norepinephrine, that adrenaline in the brain, and that's really just leading to more weird feeling, anxiety, stress, agitation. And yes, you might be able to enjoy seeking new things, seeking more alcohol, more food, more girls, or whatever it is, to enjoy that music more than you normally would. But you are in a very hyper-stressed fight-flight mode. The serotonin is gone and it's not coming back, at least not via this alcohol. The dopamine is still there throughout the night, but it's running amok. The oxytocin may or may not be there because people will probably stop liking you and connecting with you the more drunk you get, but maybe you can handle your alcohol and you're really good looking and tall and all of that, and you still will continuously get that oxytocin. So like I said, alcohol isn't always going to destroy you in every single way. It's going to give you some things, and what it does give you, it's going to give you a lot of. So that's going to feel really good. And like that slot machine, like that winning lottery ticket, that perfect illusion, it's going to feel so good that you want to keep coming back. But as far as this night goes, this night of drinking, you're done. All the happiness is gone, and now it's payback time. You think you would feel this and that you would stop now and go back home and not drink anymore. But the problem is that dopamine, alcohol is increasing that dopamine. It's turning on that animal in the middle of your brain, and it's saying, I want more, more, more. It believes that things are going to get better, that is actually going in the right direction. And this also goes back to the fact that, remember, your prefrontal cortex, that rational, smart, planning, risk assessing, inhibiting, self-managing part of the brain is gone. It's done. It's not coming back until at least tomorrow, but it might be a few more days. The children are home alone. The zookeeper has left the zoo and the cages are wide open. These animals can finally roam free in a world full of very tasty treats that are going to likely break them and make them more psychotic than ever before. That's something they will deal with and that the zookeeper will have to clean up later on. But tonight, we can keep going, moving forward, living as if there are no consequences and that we are invincible. Remember, the GABA keeps flowing throughout the night. Yes, the dopamine does too. The dopamine is the part that we are focusing on, the part that we like about alcohol because it keeps making us feel good. It's that same feeling of looking at porn for way too many hours or eating too much cake or candy or binge watching Netflix. That feels good, but there's other things going on at the same time, whether we're looking at them or not. And yes, we do like the GABA. The GABA is nice. It turns off that prefrontal thinking, annoying human brain of ours. That's why we love the GABA. Lower anxiety, less thinking, more just living in the zone, living in flow, returning to our childhood. That wandering, free, relaxed, childlike state where we are open and everything is okay. But maybe our childhood wasn't so great. Maybe that early part of the brain, that part that is left over in the middle of the night after daddy's gone home because we kicked him out with the alcohol, maybe that inner child out there dancing on the dance floor has been traumatized. Maybe that inner animal is full of fear and worry, and maybe it hates the world, or it hates women, or it doesn't feel safe. It wants to attack. It wants to destroy. It is not a happy child. It is not a cuddly little animal. It is a untrained dog. It is a vicious predator. And if you're that person, you probably shouldn't be drinking alcohol. You need that parent upstairs, up there in the prefrontal cortex to control isn't the right word, but to tell that inner child no until at least that child is healed. Because if you leave that child home alone, this busted, broken child, it might cause real problems for the entire family. The rage, the hurtful behavior that it has the potential to inflict, what it wants to do, but normally with the prefrontal cortex, it's saying, no, you can't do that. That's not good. You're going to go to jail. You're going to get in trouble. You're going to hurt people. You're going to hurt yourself. This is not good. Don't do it. We don't think this consciously usually, but our body and brain is smart enough because it wants to survive it. It wants to be free. It doesn't want to cause any big problems for itself. It suppresses those actions and behaviors, words and things that in the long run, it knows, that prefrontal cortex knows are no bueno, not good. So while it's fun and exciting and happy to be a child, you want to be free. You don't want your parents to tell you what to do. Sometimes you need it, and some people need it more than others. So before thinking about going out drinking, you need to understand how you are, who you are, how your brain developed, what your life experiences are, how okay and safe is it for your lower brain structures, your limbic system, your memories, your traumas, your early neural pathways, your non-linguistic circuits to run the show. What kind of animal are you? And yes, you can change your inner animal, but you are currently, for better or worse, because of your genetics, because of your childhood and your adolescence, you are a certain beast. Can that beast play on its own? If not, don't drink more than a drink or two, or probably shouldn't be drinking at all. And even if you are a happy child, even if everything was all perfect and your brain highways are built and paved in the crispest, goldest cement. Cement? Is that what roads are made of? I don't know. Whatever that stuff is. Even then, you're going to fall deeper and deeper and deeper into the pits of your animal state. You're going to become a reptile in the end, which we're going to get to. And that is not good for anybody. Nobody wants to be a reptile. All they do is run away, all scared, and they attack, all hungry and wanting to bang. Some people reach that state faster via alcohol, and others, it might take longer. But if you're staying out drinking until 5 a.m., the likelihood of you getting there, the probability of you getting there is getting higher and higher. And if you go out drinking night after night or week after week or year after year, the odds are you are going to return to that reptilian state, or at least the basic mammalian state. You're no longer truly a human, or at least your most special human parts are turned off for a large part of your life. And even when they're not turned off, they're dampened down, they're damaged, they're not quite there anymore. Your default mode, your default state is child or animal. So after that GABA has shut down that prefrontal cortex, it still has, if you keep drinking, it keeps flowing. You have more GABA, more of these sort of turn off keys. So where does it go next? Think of your brain, at least in terms of the way alcohol relates to it, kind of like soil. If you pour a little bit of alcohol in the soil, it's first going to attack and affect those upper layers of the soil, the top soil. I'm not a gardener or whatever you call those people, but it's going to affect the top part. So it's going to affect the top part of your brain. And then if you keep pouring more alcohol into that brain, it's going to go deeper and deeper and deeper into the brain. But it's going to start at the top and move down to the bottom. You're not going to start at the bottom and move up to the top. If that was the case, I don't think anybody would drink, because we would feel horrible from the very beginning. Or actually, we would die from the very beginning. That's what poison is. That's what pure poison is. It just turns off the entire system very quickly. There is no feel-good beginning. There is no honeymoon. There is no little delicious appetizer before the meal full of bones and prickly tumbleweeds or whatever they put on that plate. That's not there. There's nothing good. It's just death. Okay? So, and alcohol will reach that point. Alcohol will shut everything down if you let it. That's alcohol poisoning. That's what happens when people drink too much. That's what happens. But it starts in the top. It starts shutting off the less necessary parts of the brain. Yes, we love our human cortex. We love thinking, or maybe we don't, but we use language, we use reasoning, we think about the future, but we don't really need to for survival. We could survive without that, technically. What we really need are the very base structures, those things in the brainstem that control breathing and heart rate and blood pressure and all of that. That's the very bottom of the soil, the very bottom of the earth, the molten hot core being protected by the things above it. Hopefully you don't drink enough alcohol for it to hit those parts and turn off those parts, but the more you drink throughout the night, the more it's going to seep down into the brain and slowly turn off more and more structures, starting with the newer, less necessary ones, and then slowly moving into ones that are still pretty necessary, still pretty useful, but maybe we don't really need them. But eventually, if you keep pushing that brain hard enough into the wall and you keep pouring alcohol down its throat, it's going to have no other choice. It's just going to have to drown. But it's trying to save you, and it does that by shutting down what it thinks is the best place to shut down. forcing certain players to take one for the team, sacrificing certain soldiers that maybe, yes, we love and are useful, but we don't really need, but without which we can still win the war. So after the prefrontal cortex, next comes those animal parts of the brain, these parts of the limbic system. For example, the hippocampus. The hippocampus is the part of our brain that's known for memory, especially short-term memory. So when we have a new experience or we download new data from the world, it goes through our eyes or through our senses, through our skin or whatever, but then it goes to our short-term memory center, this hippocampus, where it stays for maybe 5 to 20 seconds, and then our brain moves it into other parts of the brain, which forms long-term memories, or just deletes them. But this hippocampus, which is sort of the entryway into memory, that gets shut down. So this also explains why you don't remember a lot of the things that happened when you were out drinking. Yes, you might remember some of the things because some things were interesting or important enough or happened early on enough in the night that you could remember them, but the things that happened later in the night when the hippocampus was completely shut down, or the things that were not that memorable, that weren't that exciting, at least relatively speaking, compared to the other exciting things that were happening when you're out drinking, you just totally forgot those things. If in your normal waking state, you probably would have found a lot of those things to be really interesting and worth remembering, but you just can't remember them because the hippocampus and other related memory-based structures are shut down. And it makes sense. Do you really have to remember? Not really. You're gonna be okay if you don't remember that dude you met, or that conversation you had, or that maybe near-death experience that you had, or that you fell down. You don't really have to remember that. You have enough memories already to last you a lifetime, at least as far as survival is concerned. So shut down those parts of the brain, and these are also just underneath the prefrontal cortex, right? So it makes sense from a physical and just a logistical standpoint. This also explains why some people actually get blackout drunk. They don't remember large periods of time from the night. Maybe 2 hour or 3 hour or 4 hour window is just completely non-existent. Those memories were never formed. That part of the night was deleted. Or maybe you don't remember the entire night, or at least anything after 11 p.m., but then you wake up at 6 a.m. on the street and you don't know where the time went, what happened, what you did. You might even be in your bed. You might have even walked home or found your way home somehow in almost this sort of sleepwalking state. You were conscious. You were probably talking and doing things during this walk back home, or this return back home, or whatever you were doing, and your friends might say, "Oh yeah, you were talking. You said you're going to go home, and da." And they might remember because they weren't as drunk as you. But you're doing this, and you're acting halfway normal, perhaps. But your hippocampus and your parts of the brain in the limbic system that are responsible for forming and keeping memories, those are shut off. They're done, and you're not going to remember any of this. So you get blackout drunk. That is, that's not what you want. That's no good. This middle part of the brain also gets flooded with dopamine. So you start seeking more pleasure. Therefore, you start eating more junk and doing stupid things and chasing the opposite sex, for example, because you want to feel pleasure now. You want to feel good now. You don't want to earn it. You don't want to work for it. You want more goodies in the form of alcohol and non-alcohol. All that stuff that the typical nightlife environment provides you with. Loud music, sexy people, delicious treats, and a promise of a better tomorrow, or at least a better now. So you keep chasing those things, chasing whatever's around you, and you're probably not going to get it. You might get it, but there will be a payback time, a time for you to pay back that debt, especially if it's in the form of these short-term hacks like alcohol or junk food, or maybe even a one-night stand. That might also make you feel worse in the end than it makes you feel in the moment. Remember, easy come, easy go. Everything has its price, and everything has a equal and opposite rebounding effect. And actually, more than equal, it might actually slam you down further into the other direction than you would think. Cortisol is also getting ramped up at this stage in the night, so you're feeling actually more stressed. Remember, the blood vessels are now constricting, your heart is pumping faster, you're breathing faster, everything is getting more stressed out. So you have more cortisol, and you don't just have more cortisol now, but also you're kind of busting that communication system between the part of the brain, the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland, and the adrenals down there above the kidneys. That whole system, that whole network of dudes that control the release of hormones such as cortisol, you're kind of busting that and you're cracking open that pipe. So the cortisol starts leaking out in your daily non-alcohol life, the next day at work, the next week at your friend's birthday party or whatever. You're more in a stressed out mode. Cortisol is more flooding through your system on a default basis. And yes, if you stop drinking, you can fix that, but at least for now, and as long as you keep flooding your body with alcohol, it's going to break that HPA, I don't even going to try to say this, man, hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. Yeah, that thing is going to bust that up, and that's going to lead to a lot of stress in the end. So yeah, that release of cortisol in the very beginning of drinking, you release that anxiety, you release that all that pain in the first couple drinks or the first 30 minutes of the night or whatever. But dude, that's not for free. It's coming at a huge price. And I know I'm talking in this sort of random, scattered direction, and this is another reason why I didn't want to cover this topic is although I'm usually pretty logical, organized. No, I'm not. Am I organized? I don't know. I'm kind of organized in my way of thinking. I can put the pieces together in a halfway clean way that makes sense. Alcohol is such a messy drug. It does so many different things, and it's just like shotgun that splinters out in so many directions that I don't know which little which little piece to pick up and focus on first, because there's just a lot going on. And maybe it's very fitting that I'm talking about alcohol in this very chaotic, scrambled way, because that's what alcohol does to you. It scatters your brain. It affects you in a lot of different ways, and you don't even know how to make sense of it. And therefore, we don't even try to make sense of it. We just enjoy the experience. We get drunk. We enjoy the night. We pay the consequences, but we don't really want to analyze it because it's a super mysterious, hard to grasp phantom. So I'm sorry for maybe not being as concise or to the point or organized as I like to be, but this is partly my lack of communication skills or maybe lack of understanding about alcohol, but it's also part of the nature of the beast itself, alcohol itself. It is a confusing, mysterious monster of a thing. So I'm just going to plunge forward and pick up whatever next piece I see, and that is testosterone, hormones. We were talking about cortisol, so let's just keep talking about the hormones. Yes, after one drink of alcohol, that might raise your testosterone, but very quickly, just like with the serotonin and all of the other goodies, that's going to flip upside down. The happiness will be toppled onto its head, and you are going to start releasing more estrogen. And while estrogen is not a bad thing, we do need a balance between estrogen and testosterone. Whether we're a man or a woman, we need that sort of sweet balance. Enough estrogen, enough testosterone. The problem with alcohol is it releases too much estrogen for both men and women. Not only does it increase the estrogen, but it takes the testosterone that we already have in our system and it converts it in this process called aromatization. Dude, these words do not matter. Anyway, it takes that testosterone, and remember I talked about how the body can chemically convert things into other chemicals? Yes, this happens with testosterone too. It gets turned into estrogen, and therefore you find people who drink a lot, they have man boobies, they got the breast tissue, okay. We don't even want to think about that. We don't want to talk about that. So why am I going on about man boobs? You got the gut, you got more fat, all these things that, women also have, and for good reason. They need a little bit more fat. They need breasts, all of these things. But basically, we're switching to the other side of the yin and the yang, and we're kind of feminizing ourselves with the alcohol. Yeah, another brewski for the girls. Get some. Yeah, you want some with this? Yeah. Maybe not. Maybe I don't want some of that lush, plump, booby, potbelly magic. Domo arigato. No thanks. This increase in estrogen might also be part of what's accounting for the higher breast cancer rates in women who drink. And the more the woman drinks, the more alcoholic beverages she consumes, the higher the risk of developing breast cancer, along with other cancers, disorders, and diseases. And this is true of both men and women. The more you drink, the higher your risk of developing any kind of health problem, really. And some of the numbers are very startling, making you wonder why this stuff is even legal in the first place. We need to start thinking longer term. We also need to be able to embrace the dark side of life, to face our pain head on and look at it, to look at the reality. But we don't want to look at the reality. We want to run away from it. We want to escape it. We want a quick solution. We want to feel better and to look better and be better now. We don't want to accept the fact that we're not really all that great, that our life is not what we want it to be, that we are not happy, that we are depressed, that we are anxious, that we might have some sort of psychiatric or mental health problem. We don't want to accept that, so we find little ways to hide from that reality. But that is really just digging us a deeper hole that we ultimately will have to get out of if we are to reach a functional, happy state. So my point here is that as painful as it might be in the short term and the midterm to build the new healthy habits, to do the healthy, good things that are going to make us better, that are actually going to solve our problems, whatever they may be, those pains in the beginning are going to lead to pleasure in the end. And the things that are very pleasurable in the very beginning are often going to lead to more pain in the end. So do you want a pleasurable illusion or a painful reality? A bite of happiness followed by a feast of pain, or a bite of pain followed by a feast of happiness? Maybe we have a little bit of both, but in the end, we need to spend more time in the darkness of reality and to feel the pain that exists and to face it head on and to grow in more sustainable ways by taking real action and consuming real foods that matter. So we keep drinking. We've already reached the point where we are talking faster, talking louder, being a little bit annoying to a lot of people probably because, one, we no longer have that prefrontal cortex that is inhibiting stupid actions, harmful, bad things, but we also are losing control over our muscles and our motor movements, our mouth, our hands, our eyes. We start dancing more. We start moving around faster. We start talking faster. We are in less control of not only our brain, but we're in less control over our body. And the body just moves in the way that that animal or child body wants to move. And this is, of course, linked to a lot of other things happening in the brain at the same time. For example, like we talked about, the increase in dopamine. And we know that dopamine is essential for movement. And the more we have, the more we move and the faster we tend to move and talk and so on. And yes, maybe we need that. Maybe we need to move around. Maybe we need to release something that we couldn't release emotionally or verbally or bodily in our normal thinking, rational life. But we might also release too much. Think about predator. Think about crime, for example. A lot of crimes, a lot of very bad things happen while people are under the influence of alcohol. And they don't even necessarily need to be that drunk. They just got to be drunk enough to where they've shut down the prefrontal cortex. Of course, the more parts of the brain they shut down, and I keep saying shut down, but what I mean is turn down. Yes, maybe shut down, but not necessarily. Basically, turning it down. Perhaps totally off, but at least to the point where they're not functioning properly anymore. Anyway, the more parts that are turned down, for example, not just the prefrontal cortex, but also the short-term memory centers, the motor control centers, the other things, the other parts of the brain, yeah, maybe the worse it gets. Or maybe it reaches a sweet spot where they just can't function anymore. They can't do that bad thing because they're, at that point, not a predator. They're not a lion or a tiger or bear or predator anymore. Now they're a little ladybug, a rock, a tree, a vegetable, unoperational, dead. So it makes sense that a lot of crimes are committed, a lot of bad things happen when people are drunk. This is something we never talk about. We try to talk about ways to reduce homicide rates, to reduce physical domestic abuse, child abuse, rape, all of these different things. And it seems like one of the very obvious solutions that is going to sweep away 40 or 50% of all of these problems is alcohol. It's hard to pin an exact number on it, but we don't need the exact number because we know intuitively that, okay, that makes sense. But between about 40 to 60% of homicides, of murder, happen when the perpetrator, the killer, is intoxicated, has drinking alcohol. Wow. Even if that number is only 20% or 25%, that's a lot of dead people that we don't need. And a lot of unhappiness for that killer too. I'm sure he doesn't want to do that, but part of him does somehow, I guess. So we can't blame murder fully on alcohol, but it might be that sort of final straw or something that tips the balance in the wrong direction to where normally had that person had rational control over their emotions and behaviors due to a healthy functioning prefrontal cortex, if alcohol shuts that down and brings you back to that childlike state, for better or worse, that could be a problem. We know that Jeffrey Dahmer used alcohol as part of his murder ritual. He would pick up boys in the bar, he would be drunk, he would pregame, he would keep drinking, and it makes sense. We don't need to get too much into this specific case, but think about his upbringing. He was traumatized. He was isolated, alone, rejected by his parents and his peers. He had a lot of pain. He wasn't connected. He wasn't really happy. And when did he connect with his father, for example? It's when they went out and found those dead animals and dissected them, for example. This is also happening in those early years where his brain is being formed. So he's associating, and this is all just like my little hypothesis. So take it or leave it. But when he was young, he associated the release of cortisol, release meaning the stopping of cortisol. So I should have said release from cortisol. Anyway, and the beginning of pleasure, of happiness, because he's connecting with his father, he's feeling like life is okay when he was with those animal bodies. God, gross. And he started drinking alcohol from around the age of 13 for probably obvious reasons, to escape from all the pain he was feeling in the various areas of his life. So he likely began to associate alcohol with positive feelings and the escape from the negative ones. And then, even the first time he killed somebody, he was 18 at this point, and was that guy running down the street, and he was drunk, and they were drinking together. And so, as horrible as that was, he somehow felt good from that, and that was an early wiring, a neural circuit that was built in his brain, and whether he wanted to repeat it or not, he did. And we associate the entire memory of an experience with all of the different aspects of that memory. So maybe it wasn't the alcohol that he was focused on. Maybe it was why are we even talking about this? But the sex, or the connection, the feeling like he had a friend, or that someone loved him for a second, or whatever. I don't know what it was. It's really hard to understand. But maybe when he tasted that alcohol again, all those other memories associated with the alcohol, these things that we call horrible, but they gave him pleasure somehow, because they freed him from his pain, and they gave him something. They gave him dopamine. They gave him serotonin, a feeling of status, of one-upness in the most horrible way. Yeah. And it sounds horrible to talk about it in this way, but he had oxytocin because he was literally physically touching another human being in so many ways. And he, even if just through a mental Jedi trick, he felt he had someone he could trust that could be with him forever and would never abandon him, would have his back. But he drank that alcohol, and it all came back. And at the same time, it's shutting down his prefrontal cortex. It's getting him back into the animal mode. It's turning him into a predator. Ted Bundy also used alcohol a bit, but not too much. And then other killers, they just totally don't use it, because it messes up their game, their strategy. They need to think clearly, but they're still a predator. It's most likely they already have some problem with their prefrontal cortex. They're not able to really inhibit actions and behaviors as much as they would like. This could be classified as some sort of psychiatric condition like ADHD or OCD or bipolar or schizophrenia or whatever. But for whatever reason, either some kind of trauma or some sort of blunt physical event earlier in their life, they don't have a fully functioning prefrontal cortex. And I'm just kind of, yes, speculating here, but the point is the prefrontal cortex protects us from our harming ourselves and others in a lot of very vital, important ways. And whether that gets turned off because of trauma or because of a head injury or because of alcohol, it puts us in a dangerous state. It turns us into an animal, a predator. So some of these predators use their higher brain functions to get what they want. And you see this also in the bars and in the normal nightlife with alcohol. It's not just in this hardcore, weird killer world that I don't even know why we're talking about. But even in the bars and clubs, some guys go out there, or girls, but usually guys, they go out there and they get drunk, they turn off their thinking, and they go chase the women. They want to have sex, or they want to get a girlfriend or whatever. But some guys go out there and they don't drink. They go out there and they prey on the others who are drinking. So they might be drinking some kind of Sprite or a little fizzy water that looks like alcohol, or maybe they just flat out say, I'm not drinking. But they go out there and they have this logical, clear-headed mode while the victims are inebriated, making them easier to get, right? Because these people can't really think. They can't really plan ahead. They can't really rationalize, do I really want to be with this guy? Should I really go home with him? Should I do this or that? They're just living in the moment. And if their animal, if these girls' inner child is a bit frazzled, a bit broken, a bit desperate or lonely or seeking connection or seeking pleasure or whatever, then this man can catch that animal very easily, especially because he has this long-term risk-assessing strategic brain that can wrap itself over the experience and move the chess pieces in just the right way. Basically, he's playing with animals, broken or non-broken animals, children, lower life forms that are easier to prey on because they're just not functioning at their full capacity. And they're only living in the now, or they're living closer to the now and closer to instant pleasure and instant fear. And the stories, the rationalization, the identity, a lot of that stuff is not really in the foreground. It might be there, but it's sort of fading off into the background, and it fades off and disappears the more we drink. Even during the Revolutionary War back in the 1770s, when the United States was trying to gain independence from Great Britain, these recruiting sergeants would go into bars, go into public houses, and buy free drinks for these young lads, these lucky young lads, and get them all drunk. And then these guys would wake up the following morning, probably with a dry mouth and a splitting headache, but even worse, realizing that under the influence, they signed their life away. They joined the war. They joined the army. Oh, man, how evil is that? People died from alcohol in ways we never even imagined. Oh, what a tool of manipulation it can be, and how many predators are out there to take advantage of those innocent, inebriated souls. Okay, that was a bit of a creepy, weird little rant I went on, but the main point is these higher brain structures, the neocortex, the prefrontal cortex, are very important for our own happiness, for our own safety, but also for the safety of others. And if you want to protect yourself from not doing bad things, not committing a robbery or stealing something or breaking a rule or getting in a fight, or, I don't know, maybe even worse, committing some hardcore crime like the ones that we've been talking about, maybe don't drink. And if you don't want to be a victim of these crimes, of these horrible actions, if you don't want to get punched, you don't want to get attacked in some way. I hate using these violent words, but murdered or raped or any of that. I mean, these are unlikely, but these are extremes, but it kind of paints a picture that we are more vulnerable when we are drunk or we're in an environment where people are drunk. So if you don't want to get your things stolen, you don't want to get your body attacked, you don't want to be a victim of a crime or a perpetrator of a crime or any of these horrible things that happen because we lose this leadership over ourselves. All the parents are gone, and when there's this crazy Lord of the Flies party going on, bad things can happen there. You might just lose things, for example, because you're not thinking about the future of the risk of, putting your phone here and there. And also remember, your memory centers are being shut down, so you don't remember putting your phone down. Remember, the hippocampus just stores things for 5 to 10 seconds, and when you're drinking alcohol, it might store them for 1 second or 0 seconds. So your phone is gone because you don't remember putting your phone there. You don't remember putting your wallet there. You've lost your bag. You've lost your things, and now you're home, or maybe in some hotel, tied up and gagged up with some obese pig of a man, and you suddenly can't find your phone. You can't find your bag. You don't even know how you got to where you are. One more point about our teenage years and adolescence is, remember, these are the key years where our brain and our neural pathways are being built. So if you drank alcohol, or especially if you drank a lot of alcohol when your brain was being developed in those years when you were in high school specifically, and therefore you probably associated alcohol with the stopping of the pain, the stopping of the cortisol, and the pumping up of the happiness, the dopamine, the serotonin, all of that other feel-good stuff. You wanted to escape your horrible reality, your horrible status in high school, the pain of being with your parents or whatever, and alcohol saved you, and that built the more and more you drank it, stronger and stronger and more ingrained pathways, highways into happiness and away from pain. And as an adult, these roads still exist. They've been myelinated, and they shoot electricity through them like nothing else. And it's so easy to get back to that happiness that you felt way back then, and to escape the pain in the same way you learned how to way back then. This is a highway to pleasure, a highway away from pain that has been tried and tested, and it works, or at least it used to work, and you think it still does, but it's this old, comfortable, super highway that you know, or you feel is going to take you wherever you need to go, or to get away from wherever you don't want to be. So you're very lucky if you didn't drink alcohol or didn't drink a lot of alcohol in these early years. You're much less likely to become an alcoholic or to be a habitual alcohol user, because you found other ways out of the pain, other ways to pleasure. Maybe you went to the gym and you got muscles, or you started learning an instrument, you started playing the guitar, for example, or you read, or you became a good student, or you joined some club at school, or you had an actual girlfriend who loved you, and you had parents who were kind and loving and they listened to you, and you had a healthy home life, so you didn't need alcohol. So that's ideal. Ideally, we just didn't partake in it early on. That way, whatever memories we have associated with alcohol, whatever neural pathways have been built and coated in the substance, those aren't as strong. But the earlier you start and the more you do it earlier on, the harder it will be to escape from it, and the better it will feel, and the more tempting and addictive it will be to go back there, instead of going down other alternative roads that are probably better for you. Okay, so you keep drinking. Yeah, your human cortex, your thinking brain is shut off. Yeah, your hippocampus and your memories shut off, and your motor coordinations and movements are a bit messed up. You're tripping around, you're falling, you're reaching for the glass and you miss it somehow. All of that's happening. And then you keep drinking, and now we're getting, yes, we're in mammal mode right now. The mammal's there, but now if you keep drinking, you slip beyond that mammal mode, and you start turning off that part of the brain more and more, and you start slipping into the reptile mode. So next, for example, we have the cerebellum, this part of the brain that's right near the brainstem, just above it, and it controls our motor coordination, our balance, our posture, and yes, most animals have this because most animals need to move, and we start shutting this part down. This is when you really start tripping around and falling and stumbling over, and you wake up with bruises or fractures or whatever. A pretty necessary part of the brain. We are moving creatures, but I guess not really necessary. At least we can breathe. At least we can pump our blood through our bodies. At least we're alive. For now, keep drinking and drink enough, and that alcohol sinks in deeper and deeper into the basest parts of the brain, the brainstem. And even the very bottom parts of the brain stem that connect your brain to your spinal cord and therefore to the rest of your body, the medulla oblongata, okay? Medulla oblongata, that's the piece of the brain, the bottommost part of the brain, the bottom of your brainstem that connects your brain to your spinal cord, your mind to your body, your brain to the rest of everything else. And when that gets shut off, remember, this is the part of the brain that is responsible for controlling heart rate, breathing, blood pressure, all of those most vital things. And yes, if you drink enough alcohol, it will reach this point. And this is what we call alcohol poisoning. This is why people die from drinking too much alcohol. It literally, that GABA starts shutting off the neurons, the cells in, yes, the prefrontal cortex and the hippocampus and the hypothalamus and cerebellum and all these other parts, but eventually it gets to the last remaining most essential part, the brainstem, and they stop breathing. The most common reason why people die from alcohol poisoning is basically, usually, at least if it leads to death, it's a cessation, it's a stopping of breathing. People stop breathing, they can't breathe anymore because their body doesn't know how to breathe. Usually it happens automatically because our brain is working, it's functioning, but if you shut down the brain, you shut down the breathing, you shut down the heart, you shut down everything, and alcohol has the potential to shut down everything. GABA is great, but you don't want too much GABA. Just like with testosterone, you want a balance between testosterone and estrogen. GABA is the same way. You want a balance between GABA and glutamate. These are kind of opposites. Actually, the body turns too much glutamate into GABA to find that homeostasis, to find the balance. Glutamate itself is a precursor for GABA. Of course, you also need other things in this recipe. You need the glutamate, but you also need vitamin B6 and you need magnesium. So these are all things that will, yes, relax your nervous system and put you into a state of calm. Another reason why magnesium makes us feel more relaxed, but it's a larger recipe. Basic point, you don't want too much glutamate. Glutamate is this neurochemical that's going to excite and turn on the electricity in your brain. It's going to increase the communication between brain cells. And while that also sounds good, more brain activity, more electricity, you can have too much of that. Too much electricity, too much activity, too much communication, too much things happening in the brain. That's going to cause damage. It's going to start breaking things, start killing brain cells. And too much glutamate is a bad, dangerous, deadly thing. And too much GABA is a dangerous, deadly thing, as we've seen with alcohol. So your brain naturally, when it has too much of one or the other, it tries to balance things out by creating the other. And even over the course of the night of drinking, your body starts to notice, oh crap, there's too much GABA. Things are getting shut down too much. Let's turn things back on. And it tries its best to start turning things on. So it increases the glutamate. And it also encourages you through your behavior and consumption behaviors to seek out more glutamate. It can create some on its own, but it also needs a little bit of help from outside sources. So you start craving junk food. MSG, for example, monosodium glutamate, is one of the most common exogenous forms of glutamate that we consume. So no wonder when you're drinking, yes, your dopamine is wanting you to seek more junk, more sugar, more delicious foods to feel good. Your prefrontal cortex is shut down, so you're not thinking about the consequences or if it's going to harm your wallet or your body or your future or any of that. It just wants to enjoy. Yes, there's all of that going on, but also it's your body seeking out through these hunger signals, give me more glutamate. Let's turn things up. So you run towards that bag of chips or the fast food or the junk. Yes, this is junk, but in this time when your body desperately needs to be turned on and it needs that electricity, however dirty the fuel is, however in the long term, it's going to kill you. In the short term, it might save you, right? So you start eating, you start putting this glutamate into your body via this MSG and other things in that food, and you start balancing things out a little bit. Somehow you feel better after eating that McDonald's, whereas normally McDonald's makes you feel worse. Now it's actually making you feel better, and you feel guilty for eating this junk while you're drunk, but your body is telling you to seek this trash for a reason. And maybe, like I said, it's not about good and bad. Some good things become bad and bad things become good. It's less about good and bad or healthy and unhealthy and more about balance. Not balance like, oh, I'm going to live a balanced life, but finding that sweet spot of homeostasis where you're okay now and where your body is in this biochemical, electrical sweet spot. But you can eat all the potato chips and corn dogs and all that crap you want, but if you keep drinking and drinking and drinking and drinking, that GABA is going to overpower any glutamate that you're consuming and any glutamate that your body is desperately trying to produce to balance things out. The electrical storm, that battle between the GABA and the glutamate, is lost, and the alcohol wins, and the brain is shut down, and you are shut down, and the extent to which you have turned off your brain depends on how much you drink. The winner of this brain war, of this brain chemical war, really depends on a lot of different things. Hopefully you don't completely lose the battle. You're not dead. You don't do anything really, really stupid, but you might. So as exciting as war is, it's a very dangerous, risky thing. And however exciting alcohol and partying is, it's a dangerous and risky thing. It could turn out really good. It could turn out really bad. There will definitely be some casualties. There will definitely be some damage. Most likely, everybody loses. But we get bored. We don't want to stay in peace for too long. We aren't satisfied with our lives as it is, however healthy and happy we might be. We create destruction just for the sake of movement, of change. We think that that is going to make us happier somehow. But really, it's just our life. Just like the glutamate and the GABA kind of battle it out, so too do things like freedom and connection, solitude and social life, thinking and action, high performance and low performance, excitement and relaxation, consumption and production, and all of these different things. We think, I hate that. That's horrible. I don't like it. But when you have everything you want, it's not enough. You either want more of it or you want to go the complete opposite direction. Okay, so a few other things. Alcohol also messes up our bacteria. Remember the alcohol from the hand sanitizers or the rubbing alcohol? Remember, that's a disinfectant. It kills the bacteria. And like an antibiotic, like this rubbing alcohol or this mouthwash and all of that, it kills the bacteria indiscriminately. The good bacteria and the bad bacteria. I know bacteria, the microbiome's been a kind of all the rage these days. It's been a bit overblown perhaps, but we are basically a bacteria machine. We are bacteria, and the good bacteria do a lot of good things. They protect our gut lining. They communicate certain essential things to the brain. They help us. They feed our mitochondria energy. They give us oxygen by helping us produce things like NO2. And so when you are consuming this alcohol, you're not just messing up your brain, you're also messing up your gut. You're killing all the bacteria. And the gut, the microbiome, it runs all the way from our throat to our anus. And that whole pipelining, that whole system, that whole area is kind of like swept clean, disinfected the alcohol kills a lot of the bacteria in there, the good guys and the bad guys. And while that might sound good on paper, the good guys, these good bacteria, you need them. Without them, the bad bacteria start running the show. It leads to things like leaky gut. There are literally holes in your gut. And so that crap food and the toxins and the poisons can seep into your bloodstream and cross over the blood-brain barrier and into your brain, because the blood-brain barrier, the BBB, is also getting busted, holes getting popped in it, leading to neural inflammation, creating brain fog, creating brain problems, leading to even larger systemic problems like Alzheimer's and psychiatric illnesses and all kinds of messes. So your body has certain barriers in the gut and in the brain for reasons. It wants to keep the bad things out. But if you send the security guards home, if you blast them with a blowtorch and they're gone, and you just let these criminals, these thugs, control the whole system in your gut and surrounding your brain, then there's going to be problems. On this same note, there are a couple of different ways that our body produces nitric oxide. And remember, nitric oxide is this stuff that opens up and dilates our blood vessels, increases blood flow and oxygen flow and all of that business, and makes us feel more relaxed. Remember from the cacao episode, the theobromine and the magnesium help do this. It puts you in that more parasympathetic, relaxed state. But bacteria play an important role in this process. Yes, one way to increase our nitric oxide, one of these pathways is through our nose. So if you breathe in through your nose, there are enzymes in there that create NO2. So yes, breathing through your nose, breathing less through your mouth, that's one way to increase the nitric oxide and therefore increase your blood flow and all these other good things. And we're also probably less likely to be breathing through our nose when we're drinking, because we're going to be all stressed out. And when you're stressed out and you're in fight-flight mode, you're not relaxed, and you start breathing in through your mouth. You start gasping for air. You start chasing things. And when you're in this sympathetic state that alcohol ultimately puts you in, this state that's full of adrenaline and norepinephrine and cortisol and dopamine and all this crazy outward-facing, stressful, hunting-gathering junk, which is, of course, sometimes useful depending on your needs and priorities and situation, but you often start mouth breathing. What does that do? That means you're not getting the nitric oxide in through your nose, or at least not as much of it, and a huge host of other problems arise from this mouth breathing. And then you're drinking alcohol, and this brings us to the second pathway that we create nitric oxide. And you might be like, why are we talking about nitric oxide? Dude, because this is the way I talk. This is what I'm talking about. I don't know. And then, so the other way is through the mouth. Through food, through, for example, green leafy vegetables, we consume nitrates. Nitrates are found in the soil, and the plants eat them up, and then we eat those plants, and we consume those nitrates. Nitrates, nitric oxide. Woo. But those nitrates themselves don't create this vasodilation, this relaxing effect. We need the bacteria, specifically in our mouth, to break down those nitrates. And through this bacteria, we turn those nitrates in the mouth into nitric oxide. Another reason why we need to chew our food properly. This is something I've only been learning about recently, but the mouth, we all know, we've heard this, but it really is a key, essential part of the digestion process. The mouth contains certain bacteria that the lower parts of the digestive tract do not. These guys, these bacteria dudes that turn nitrates from the plants and stuff into nitric oxide, they exist in the mouth. And if they don't do what they got to do, then we don't get that nitric oxide. But if they do exist in the mouth and we do chew properly and we let them do their job and we leave them alone, then we will swallow that nitric oxide and it'll be released throughout our body. The thing about alcohol is alcohol kills the bacteria, remember? So it's not only killing the bacteria in your, what we classically think of as the gut, the intestines, creating this leaky gut and therefore inflammation and just systematic problems all over our body and brain and life, but it's also killing the bacteria in the mouth. It's like a mouthwash. So you also don't want to be taking mouthwash for the same reason. It's messing up the whole nitric oxide thing. And not only this, but these mouth bacteria are responsible for a lot more. And that's a whole other episode. So you're going to have problems breathing. You're going to have less oxygen. You're going to have less blood flow, less hydration to your cells, less nutrition being sent to your cells while you're drinking and the days following. So you're going to feel worse because of that too. And this naturally brings us into the topic of hangovers. Let's talk about hangovers. What are they and how can we avoid them? Oh, but before that, one more thing about the whole hydration and oxygen thing. Another thing that alcohol does is it turns off this hormone called vasopressin. Vasopressin is responsible for basically making us not pee, not go to the bathroom, to keep the water, to not release the water. But if we turn off the vasopressin, we start releasing all of these fluids. We start peeing it all out, okay? That means less water. You notice that you have to go to the bathroom a lot whenever you're out drinking. That makes sense because obviously you've been taking in a lot of fluids, but it's also due to this phenomenon of this vasopressin valve being shut off. You don't have the vasopressin production really going on anymore, and so you just let it all out. Yeah, you let it all out through your words and your actions and your silly behaviors and dance moves, but you also let it all out through your pee-pee. And this actually does segue into hangovers. When you're going to the bathroom, when you're urinating, you're not only releasing water and other things, you're releasing electrolytes, sodium, and so on. So one of the things that's causing the hangover is, yes, lack of water from not drinking enough of it when you're out drinking, but also because you're releasing a lot of it through your going to the bathroom. You're also releasing a lot of electrolytes through that process, and you're depleting your body of electrolytes. Electrolytes are important for communication between brain cells and these cells in the body. We need electrolytes for proper brain function. Without them, we're going to feel bad. We're going to not be able to think. There are going to be cognitive problems, mood problems, just overall less than optimally functioning brain and body. So one thing we can do is try to maybe drink some water here and there throughout the night while we're drinking if we do feel we have to go out drinking, if we can't control ourselves. Maybe bringing some little packs of electrolytes if you're really nerdy and tossing those into your mojito, or just tossing them down the latch because you don't care, you're drunk, you're just going to eat powder and cough it all up and forget about it the next day. Or get some electrolytes in before you go out drinking, or after you get home, or at least the morning after. Also, on the note of bacteria, we feel hungover because our bacteria is all wiped out, and that causes a lot of inflammation and stress in the body. And it also means a lot of processes are not going to be running because bacteria are a key player in a lot of bodily and brain processes. So maybe consuming some prebiotics or probiotics before, during, or after you're drinking. I don't think you're going to bring a packet of kimchi out to the bar with you, and you're probably not going to be craving natto or sauerkraut the next morning. But if you feel bad, just remember these bacteria will likely save you. You need to repopulate your system with the good guys and try your best not to let more bad guys invade. So however tasty it might be to eat the junk the next day, if you can just clench your fist and close your eyes and swallow down those healthy foods, the vegetables and whatnot, it might not be fun in the beginning, but it'll be very fun in the end. your body and brain will thank you. So yes, hangovers are not just a result of dehydration and lack of oxygen because of what we've already talked about and lack of blood flow, the vasoconstriction, but a lot more. And about the vasoconstriction, remember, after a couple drinks into the night, the rest of the night, the next day and stuff, you're going to have these tighter capillaries and blood vessels. Things aren't going to be flowing properly. Yes, they will open back up because, like everything in the body, we swing from one extreme to the other. The body's it's going to try its best to not get stuck in one state. It's going to try to find that equilibrium. So when things get real tight, they open up, and then they open up, and they get tight. Either that happens naturally without our conscious effort or behavior, or it happens with our actually doing things in our life that cause that. So it might happen underneath the conscious hood, or it might happen through the actions and behaviors that the body and brain then prompt us to take. Actions like consuming certain foods or watching certain shows that we think we are freely, willingly choosing to take, but most likely, ultimately, our body is causing us to take. Say, hey, do this. I want to feel in that sweet spot. I want to go the other way. And you're like, no, I chose to do this. You might be choosing it, but you're definitely getting a big fat nudge from the unconscious processes downstairs. Okay, hangovers. Yeah, so when you go out drinking, you're depleting your body of a lot of essential nutrients. And that includes some of the B vitamins. So you also want to be getting some of those B9s, folate, and B12, essential players in the nervous system and the electrical activity. Let's also toss in some B6, but really, let's just try to get the full spectrum of nutrients. Don't worry about what they're called. Eat a lot of vegetables, eat a lot of vast range of different things to get the entire multivitamin. Maybe you just want to pop a multivitamin itself. That's also not a terrible idea, probably. But if you can get the actual food, probably better. Another obvious reason you feel hangover is because you didn't sleep. Sleep is probably the biggest factor responsible for your terrible mental and physical state the following day. The real ultimate reason for your hangover. You might notice on nights when you drank a little bit, but you went home early, you didn't drink too much, the hangover is less. That's not just because it's less alcohol, but it's also more time slept and more quality sleep. There's this myth of the nightcap that alcohol puts you to sleep and helps you sleep. And while that is true, because remember, it turns on the GABA, it calms you down, it relaxes you, it puts you in that parasympathetic mode, that calm state of the nervous system, which is where you want to be when you sleep. If you are in this agitated fight-flight mode for whatever reason, whether it's alcohol or work or whatever other kind of stress, or you've been playing too many video games or watching horror movies at night or whatever, you're not going to be able to sleep very well. You want to be relaxed. You want to be in the parasympathetic mode when you're sleeping. And alcohol, remember, in the very beginning, it does put you into that mode. It opens things up, it relaxes you, it calms you down. It also turns off your prefrontal cortex, which is good, because if you want to sleep, you don't want to be thinking. You don't want to be worrying about what to do the next day or what you didn't get done today or whatever other stressors there are in your life. You don't want to be thinking about the future or the past. You don't want to be worrying. You don't want anxiety. You want to just go to sleep. And alcohol will help you do that because it's literally shutting down the brain. It's relaxing you. It's stopping you from tossing things over in your mind. But while there is that initial GABA surge, later on in the night, your body realizes, this is too much of this. Let's go the other direction. So it starts cranking up the glutamate, especially once the alcohol starts wearing off. And it's doing this while you're sleeping too. So you might be like, la, li, la, li, la, all perfectly slumbering like a baby. And then 4 hours later, you're like, oh, you're awake. You are wide awake and you can't go back to sleep. And that's because the glutamate has woken you up. Glutamate, along with a bunch of his rambunctious, rowdy friends, cortisol, adrenaline, noradrenaline, and all of them. And even if you don't consciously remember waking up in the middle of the night when you're drinking, you will get woken up a lot. There will be a lot of this disrupted sleep. Sleep will be less continuous. You're going to just wake up a lot in the middle of the night, which is normal. We all wake up in the middle of the night, even when we are in our most optimal mode. Remember, we have 90-minute sleep cycles, and after each cycle, we wake up for a blip. We probably don't remember it, and we go back to sleep, and we go through that whole 90-minute cycle once again. But when you're drinking, it disrupts that whole thing, and you wake up within that cycle here and there. It specifically disrupts the REM sleep, the REM sleep, the later part of that cycle where we're dreaming, and this is also where we're forming our memories and learning, and we're increasing things like creativity, and a lot of the hormones like testosterone are being produced. It's a very important part of that. And if we're skipping sleep, if we're not getting deep sleep, and we're not getting REM sleep, we're just in this sort of light, semi-sleep, tranquilized mode, essentially, because we drank. And this is more true with the more we drink and the later we drink. You're going to be getting less sleep, basically, and less quality sleep, and that's going to lead to a hangover. You might sleep in the following day, especially if you don't have work, so you might wake up at noon or 2 p.m. or something. In this case, yeah, you are kind of getting back some of that sleep. The dreams will start turning back on, probably very vividly, to make up for all the lost dreams from earlier in the night. So you're going to have these really intense dreams at 10 a.m. or whatever. So things do kind of work out, but you are ultimately going to lose sleep. And especially so if you have to wake up early nonetheless. And even if you're waking up later, that's going to have to be paid back in the end too. It's going to throw off your whole circadian rhythm, and the following day you're going to be all out of whack. You're going to have to wake up at your normal time because work is starting again. It's Monday. And it really, this hangover, for all of these different reasons, might not just last for 3 hours or 4 hours or a day. It might last an entire week, at which point you go out drinking again, and the whole process begins, and you're in this sort of downward spiral, and your life is ultimately going downhill. Whether you fool yourself into thinking that things are normal and that things are okay, you keep boosting yourself up during these few nights of the week, going out to your happy hour on Tuesday, and going out with your buddies on Friday and Saturday, and just chilling at home, relaxing with a glass of wine on Thursday, and you're kind of just feeding the illusion further and further. You're adding in things like TV and junk food and pornography and exciting little trips and vacations and shopping and gambling and all these other things, social media, and you're basically just feeding this phantom beast forever till ultimately you will wake up and there will be a existential crisis or something, or a health crisis, or probably both, along with 100 other ones. So the hangover is your body's telling you, hey, turn around, don't do this, this isn't working, don't do this again. But we remember all those fun times from our youth when we were drinking. We remember all those good times, the times we did get laid, the friends we made, the new job we got from that random alcoholic in the bar that probably shouldn't be working there anyway, and shouldn't be hiring drunkards. But anyway, you got that, and you got a better life, and those lucky prizes, those lottery tickets that we received from drinking are hard to forget, and we want more of them. And we let those somehow override these little pain signals. We call them hangovers, but really they are warning, flashing emergency lights telling us this is not what's good for you. Don't do it. It's become a normal part of life, though, a normal part of this culture, and so we don't really question it. And I know I'm just freaking ranting and going on and on, but history and legislation and stuff also goes through these cycles. There are periods of time, like in the 1920s and 1930s, where Americans didn't drink that much, but that followed period in the 1800s and the early 1900s where we were drinking whiskey like more than we drank water. There was one point where we were drinking about half a pint of whiskey on average a day. Crazy. Even kids would drink a little bit, especially whiskey. That's a whole other story. But then we got into World War II and 1950s, and alcohol spiked again. These baby boomers are drinking. The World War II dudes are drinking. And then in the 1980s, we get this backlash against drinking in the United States. Mothers Against Drunk Driving emerges in 1980, and by 1984, they help pass certain laws, like hiring the federal drinking age to 21 and lowering the legal blood alcohol level for driving from 0.1% to 0.08%. There were a lot of other things going on at the same period of time that also likely led to the decrease in alcohol consumption. For example, there was all this fear and publicity about fetal alcohol syndrome, and at the same time, the war on drugs is going on, and legislation around how companies can advertise alcohol, that was all changing. There was this general collective consciousness or awareness that alcohol has a lot of health risks involved with it. It can cause cancer and liver disease and other things. And this was becoming more common knowledge at this time, so people drank less. And we go through the 80s and a lot of the 90s where alcohol consumption is on the decline, but then, we overcorrect. And late 90s and the early 2000s, we start going on this drinking binge again. And now we are sort of in this kind of health conscious state in these recent years. And there's kind of a backlash against alcohol, but there's also the rise of craft beers and delicious things and the COVID pandemic. And so it's kind of coming back. We're going to go back and forth across this seesaw. So your alcohol consumption patterns are not just controlled by your own history, your own past, but also at what point in time in history and in which culture you were born. So there's a luck of the draw in that aspect, but naturally, either way, you're going to course correct throughout your own life, or at least you should be if you're listening to the signals. Naturally, you might drink a lot in your 20s, and then you kind of take a break in your 30s, and then you might return to it in your 40s. And all of these vacillations along the spectrum of extremes happens on every little level, from the tiny micro things going on inside our bodies to our own lives, to our own culture and history and the universe itself. And this is another reason not to feel too guilty about our slipping up or breaking our ethical code or doing the wrong thing. We naturally seek equilibrium, homeostasis, and the way out of this hell, which might look like a palace, which might look like heaven, is to go down into the tavern and to whip ourselves in the mouth, or overconsume junk food and become obese until later on we course correct once again and start running marathons. This is life. This is the human condition. It is the condition of all animals. The difference with us is we have this bigger cortex, which other animals don't have. Yes, some higher primates, some of our cousins like the chimpanzees and the bonobos have decently large prefrontal cortexes, but they're nothing compared to what we have. So we can kind of manipulate reality in ways that animals can't. And so we can get stuck in sort of these unnatural states. So we can get stuck on one extreme for longer than we naturally would, because whereas our body would course correct and bring us to the other side and help us even things out, and we would listen to those signals because we'd have no other choice, we can block those signals, we can ignore them, we can turn them off, we can override them with rationalities and stories and logic and words and ideas and things. We can paint stories from our culture, our society, our religions, our life over this natural bodily reality that's screaming at us and just muffle that, blind ourselves from being able to see it, numb ourselves from being able to feel it, and instead trust these man-made stories that may or may not, probably are not helping us, but only tearing us down further and faster by shutting ourselves off from being able to see or communicate with the natural pre-human reality and force-feeding us convenient illusions through our prefrontal cortex. Remember, not only does this big human brain of ours turn off and say no and repress and suppress these harmful actions and words and behaviors that we probably shouldn't be doing, it also turns off some things that we should be doing. It basically is able to not listen to the inner signals from our child inside, from our animal inside, from our deeper, more primal parts of our brain and body. Other animals have to listen. They don't have this parent or as powerful of a parent upstairs recontrolling the show in sometimes good ways, but sometimes very unnatural and harmful ways. Oh, one more thing about the hangovers is it's not just the alcohol that we're drinking. Alcohol is also combined with, of course, sugar a lot of times, which is going to increase inflammation and a lot of other problems in our bodies. It's going to destroy brain cells and all of that. It's going to increase the bad bacteria, blah, 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 blah. But alcohol also has what we call congeners, or these sort of like flavoring agents, extra things added that are beyond the ethanol. And ethanol, yes, while it is the main kind of alcohol, and I'm never going to end, this episode's never going to end, while ethanol is the sort of main kind of alcohol in the alcoholic drinks, there are also congeners. And one of these congeners, for example, is methanol. It is another kind of alcohol. We mentioned earlier that there's isopropyl, ethyl, and methyl alcohol. This is a methyl type of alcohol, hence methanol. Methanol is even more dangerous and more toxic than ethanol, but luckily it doesn't exist in large quantities in most alcohols. But if, for example, you're getting some really cheap stuff, or it's a bootleg kind of funky stuff like they were passing around in the 1920s due to prohibition, this alcohol might not be made primarily from ethanol because ethanol is harder and more expensive to produce. Methanol is a little bit cheaper and easier, but it's also more deadly and toxic, and it will kill you. You cannot just consume large quantities of this. There are obvious reasons why we consume ethanol, not methanol. But this usually isn't a worry, but there are little amounts of methanol in a lot of alcoholic drinks as part of the process of making the alcohol. Not going to kill you, but it will lead to a greater hangover. There are also things, for example, in the wood, the oak barrel, there are these congeners being released, these tannins that are released from leaves like tea leaves and wood, like the oak barrel and the skin of the grapes, for example. And so depending on what kind of alcohol is being made and how it's made, there will be more or less congeners. The closer you get to pure ethanol, like gin or vodka, and the less it's stored in a barrel and without things like grapes and grape seeds and stuff that are going to release more of these congeners, usually the less it's going to cause a hangover, because the more it'll just be pure ethanol. And while ethanol and its byproducts, acetaldehyde and acetate, are dangerous and harmful and cause hangovers, these congeners just add more to the mess. So some easy way to understand this is usually the lighter colored alcohols, the vodkas, the gins, and things like that are more pure ethanol, and they have fewer congeners, well, because of they're not made from barrels, they're not stored in barrels. That stuff's not leaking out of the wood, the oak, and they also aren't using grapes or leaves or things like that. So it's more pure, I guess. But once you start getting to the darker alcohols like whiskey and rum and brandy, these are things that are made in the barrels, and they're darker, and they have a lot more added little flavors and agents and things that are going to mess you up. Same thing with wine. Wine is made in these barrels, but not only that, it has these grapes in there. And the grapes also release certain things that kind of harm you. And there are good things, right? We talk about resveratrol, but that's just like a tiny piece of it, and it's not even enough to really do anything. But there are all these other congeners from the skin and the seeds that wreak havoc on our system. So if you don't want a hangover, avoid the red wine, avoid the brandy, avoid the whiskey, the rum, and all of that, and go for some classic vodka or something like that. Beer also is a bit better. The way it's produced, just the overall structure of it, is going to lead to less of a hangover. Also, it has less alcohol. It has a lower alcohol percentage, right? So you'll be drinking less. There'll be less damage. There's more hydration probably going on and on and on. If you're going to drink, you don't want a hangover, 1, don't drink at all. 2, drink less. And if you have to drink, then drink something like vodka or beer or gin, or and avoid things like brandy and red wine especially. Don't listen to me either, though. Don't gotta listen to me. Listen to your own body. See how you feel. You will naturally course correct consciously or unconsciously and find what works for you. Now, this is exactly why I didn't want to do this episode. There's just too much to cover, and I can't even organize it. I can't say everything I want to say about it. There are things I didn't talk about, like alcohol's effect on the immune system, which is kind of common sense because it's busting everything and breaking everything down and creating inflammation and on. But I didn't talk too much about that. And I didn't really get into habituation, this phenomenon by which the more you consume something pleasurable, the less pleasurable it gets. The more alcohol you drink, the more alcohol it will take in the future to get the same pleasurable, positive benefits from it. So basically, you fall into a kind of trap where you have to keep consuming or chasing more for less return. More drinking of alcohol, but less satisfaction or euphoria from the alcohol. Of course, you can stop drinking for a while or drink less, and you can thereby increase your sensitivity to the substance and gain pleasure from it with less. But that's a whole other thing, and I didn't really get too much into that or a lot of other things that I skipped over or missed or just flat out got wrong, because this is a very hard topic, a very mysterious substance. But I wanted to get this process running, this knowledge process started between me and you, so that we can at least think a little bit more consciously about why we are drinking, whether it's helping us, and also ways forward, how to find other solutions to these things that we are missing in our life. Remember, we drink because we are trying to get whatever we are missing. Of course, with dopamine, you always feel like you're missing it, so you want more. So, you're going to be chasing that dopamine high. With alcohol, that's one thing, but that's just a tiny, actually a pretty big piece of the pie. But there are also things we're chasing, like we talked about with connection, with oxytocin and serotonin. We go out to drink to socialize. So maybe we can find other ways to increase our serotonin and oxytocin. We can build real relationships with people. We can take small actions that build trust. We can do nice things. We can smile at the person at the store, or even just look at the cute dog walking by, or say hi to the old lonely man that everyone's running away from, and just be a nice person. And that might not pay off in the end. People might still not like you. You might not make friends. You might not get a girlfriend, not immediately. But if you keep taking these nice actions and you start getting more social and doing nice things for people, putting yourself out there, entering other social situations, things probably will work out in the end. Or you can just play the one-player game and create a project for yourself and do things that you're proud of. Do things that make you feel, yeah, I am enough. Yeah, I am connected to the rest of the world. Maybe it's just like what I'm doing with this podcast where I'm talking to you. I'm not directly talking to you. I'm alone right now, but I feel okay because I'm doing what I wanted to do. I wanted to make this podcast and talk to you guys, even if I don't know if you're listening to me or not, and I don't know if I'll even get the downloads, and it doesn't matter really, but I'm taking these actions. I'm going down this slow road that may or may not pan out in the end, but at least it's not crushing me. And I like who I am when I'm doing this. So do things that make you like who you are and be a person that you want to be. Be nice to people, reach out to people, help them, do favors. Just like in the chimpanzee world, sometimes you groom the other chimpanzee. You pick the little bugs and twigs and things out of its fur, and it just doesn't pay you back. It runs away, and you're like, dude, I don't trust people anymore. I don't want to do this. What's in it for me? People are dicks. But eventually you keep doing that, and you will get groomed back, and you will make friends. You will make alliances. You will therefore get the serotonin and oxytocin and all of these things. And I'm not trying to sound like a selfish dude, like we're trying to get things from each other, but we do need each other for pieces of our happiness. And that's one of the reasons why we go out drinking, is because we're seeking other people. We're seeking friendship. We're seeking friendship with other men or other women, but we're also seeking love and sexual intercourse and all these other things alcohol promises but doesn't really deliver on. So we got to find other ways to find mates, to find friends, to find peace with ourself, and to live a life that is moving us forward in a direction that we want and that we are proud of. Eating foods that actually lift us up and increase our vibrancy and energy and turns on the right brain processes that we need and feeds the good bacteria. And connecting with the sun and the water and the earth and the air. Sleeping, breathing, meditating, sitting in silence, moving your body, entering nature, and on. And I can never stop. So I'm just going to stop now. And if you listen to this entire thing, we are friends. We are friends forever, because you're getting closer to the real me. And if you ran away and you're not listening anymore, that's good too, I guess. Honestly, I probably should have cleaned this up, but I couldn't. Not with this topic, not yet. Maybe next year, maybe in 2 years, but this is the beginning of this journey of learning about this beast called alcohol.